Good morning. I am a little bit late. I'm working on sourdough bread. I'm one of those people. I was not going to talk about it, but instead it was the very first thing I said. Um, I understand that makes me a walking cliche. Learning how to do sourdough during the pandemic. A little flour on my shirt. Whatever. I want to make bread, and someone gave me some starter, and I got to get started, and it's been an obsession. And so I'm trying to figure out how to handle all this bread. So the thing is, you got this yeast, and it's like this starter stuff, and it's like you got to feed it and get rid of a bunch of it every 12 hours, unless you put it in the fridge. And I'm not ready to do that yet. But that means that every 12 hours, I have like this starter that needs to either be thrown away or used. And I'm like, well, I better make bread. So I started on Friday, and today's Tuesday, and I think I've made like 8 loaves of bread in 3 days. I've got one just came out of the oven, and I've got 3 more that are in process this today. That's not a healthy way to live your life. It's not sustainable. But we're going to do this for a little bit. I'm going to be a little bit reckless with my bread making for a little while, and then I'll settle into a good little groove. I'm gonna say, wow, we dropped viewers in the last 30 seconds. Me talking about that. How funny is that? I know. You are at the mercy of the dough, Lisa. That's the thing. Is it's doing its thing, and you've got to decide. It's a living thing. So I've got to figure out, Betsy, how to cook it without eating all of it all the time. Like my body's like, well, that's a lot of bread. I too am working on sort of taking a little bit better care of myself in terms of the way that I eat. I'm working on eating in a way that is good for my body long term, and I'm not sure where bread fits into that, but I have figured something out. Bread fits into that. I'm not having bread. I did that for too many years. Now I'm playing catch up. I'm eating bread. I think a good life will include bread for me. The bread guild will be much larger after the pandemic. I think you're right. I think there's going to be all these people who are like, I too now bake bread. Can we have sourdough communion bread? I don't think that would be a good idea. But the size of boulet that I made today, it looked like it could be. I could cut out the center and put a little clam chowder in the middle, and then and then die happy, I think is the thing. Okay, Leslie asked me a really good question last week, and then I want to be like totes transparent with you, Leslie, which is that you then expanded a little bit, and I said I'm going to come back to this, and then I didn't come back to it. So I just want to be clear about that. And so I'm a little bit negligent in a way that I didn't want to be, and I apologize to you for that. It was not by any stretch of the imagination because of a defect in your questions or my perception that you should or shouldn't have asked something. It was completely about my not having some time with it. But I like the way you asked the question, and it actually but we are going to talk about it. And it taps into also a conversation that Lisa Grubbs and I have been having. And Lisa and I only started the conversation. I want to be super clear that today could be the day that I lose all or most of you. Because I'm going to say some things that could make you go like, I knew it. He sucks. I saw it coming. I've been waiting for this moment because I think that there are some things that I want to state as a matter of sort of, and this is a word that people don't like, as a matter of dogma. Okay? And I bet when I said that word, like at least one of you was like, oh, why? So let's take a step back for a moment and acknowledge something. which is that dogma is I feel very washed out. How do I want more color. Dogma, hold on, I'm going to fix this later. Let's see if that helped. Oh, it helps when I get a little closer, not further away. Oh, all right. Dogma is actually a really normal part of our life. Dogma is literally the accepted beliefs of an organization. Okay, the accepted beliefs of a body. So, and if you want to take this out of like religion or patriotism for a second, like dogma is like, my wife is calling twice now. I guess if she calls a third time, I'll have to interrupt this call and answer. Dogma is like McDonald's, okay? Or Five Guys. Let's do Five Guys because McDonald's is controversial for some people. Five Guys burgers. Five Guys people are like, we make burgers and fries. That's who we are. And someone's like, hey, should we make tacos today? And Five Guys people are like, no, we are a burger place. And when we fry our French fries in peanut oil, this is what we do. It is one of the things that differentiates us from other places, and it is how we like this thing to look. So it's not that all French fries need to be fried in peanut oil to be French fries, but if you're a Five Guy fry, you're fried in that. My wife is calling for a third time. Please hold. Hello. Hi. Yeah, I'm on live with my people on TV on the YouTube thing right now. Yes. Nope, it's right now. So I'm gonna hang up on you and we can talk later. Okay, I'm just gonna. So that's great. Go ahead. Okay. Okay. Sure. Okay. Sounds great. I guess we'll have to. Yeah. This is great. That's fine. Nope, I think we should do that. No, I think now it's fine. Okay, great. Okay. Bye. Nobody is dead or dying. But at least we know where the pod will be delivered at my house. The dogma helps define a body. Okay? Like dogma is the accepted beliefs of that thing. So again, going back to Five Guys, if I said, we ran out of peanut oil, let's just use vegetable oil, no one will notice. Five Guys, and I worked at Five Guys, they'd be like, no, that's not, you could make a perfectly delicious French fry that way, but it's not a Five Guys fry, okay? This is what dogma is and why it matters. You just logged on to watch me drink Diet Coke and talk to my wife on the phone, Beth. Good work. Well, don't worry. I got you covered, okay? I like these little bottles. They're my favorite way of consuming Diet Coke, other than a fountain. The fountain soda is the closest thing to a platonic ideal that I have found on this earth. All right. So we're talking about the dogma of faith and why dogma matters, because dogma is a word that our generations, I'd say boomers and Xers and maybe millennials as well, are scared of. Meanwhile, we all spout dogma. We, all of us, sort of inherently talk about like inherited, accepted beliefs of what we believe. So anytime, whether you be conservative or liberal or self-described progressive or moderate, when you talk about our country and you say this is what we should be, you're basically stating a dogmatic preference. Like you're basically saying this is what the dogma of America is meant to be. Like that's what you're doing. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that language, it's part of the dogma of our it's like the dogmatic reality. Okay, I'm going to say this word so many times, but you're going to be like, never say that word again, and you're going to hear it in your sleep. Dogma, dogma. Okay, but it's an important word. Okay, so we've inherited a certain number of beliefs as Christians. There are things that to say you're a Christian means certain things. Now, it can, within that spectrum, there are different sort of places one can be, right? I mean, in the simplest of terms, Catholic or Protestant or Orthodox, right? Or you could go Anglican, Lutheran, Methodist, Baptist, Presbyterian, right? Okay. You could say non-denominational, which is in its own sense is sort of a denomination. There's evangelical dogma. There's the term fundamentalist actually was a specific term that laid out a set of dogmatic sort of instruction of how to interpret the dogma of the church, the inherited beliefs of the church. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit. So with all that in mind, dogma. Okay, what I'm going to talk about today in relation to Leslie's question, and then also you all, as you know, and some of you don't, Beth's new to this, you can type over on the side, you can ask a question, or you can ask me a question while I'm in the midst of my monologue or diatribe, whichever you choose for it to be. But I want us to be thinking, I'm going to be saying some difficult things today, I think, because you're going to say, well, that feels really black and white. And you'll be right. Because there are places where we decide that there are things that are true for this organization, for this body. It's just a thing that we do as people. It's how we define it. Okay. So when we talk about the Christian or Christian dogma we're literally saying like Five Guys uses peanut oil for its French fries. That's what we're doing, right? Likewise, Christians believe Son of God who lived again. Okay, the as the basic dogma of our faith. Okay, and apparently my internet went down for a second, and now I'm back. This is just going to be a very interesting session. All right. I'm going to read Leslie's email. Okay. See if I can find it. I had it just up here, and then phone calls and stuff. While I'm looking for that, Kathy Baggett's with us. Kathy Baggett is a wonderful member of this Ask a Priest organization, group, friendship team, Tuesday, I think. And Kathy is a member of a church up in Columbus, Ohio, or thereabouts, and she's on standing committee with me. And she usually asks wonderful questions. And she didn't send a question in this week, but she did want to remind me to say that we should be praying for our bishop who is in the hospital with an infection. Our bishop, Tom Bridenthal, is a good man. And I mean, even if he's in the hospital with an infection, we should pray for him. It just so happens he actually is a very good man, and a good leader for our diocese. And so we are. I'm sad to hear he's in the hospital. I hope he's okay. We don't really know much beyond that. We know that he is in the hospital for an infection, and the rest is being kept private, and that it is not COVID. He does not have COVID-19. They did make a point of saying that and letting us know. So I hope that you will keep him in your prayers. Okay. Leslie wanted to ask a question essentially last week, and then we started to dig in deeper about the idea that in the strictest and the simplest terms, she said, if Christian theology is correct, does that mean all other religions are wrong? But then she went a little deeper, right? Like incorrect in their beliefs. And she said, is it plausible? Last week we talked a bit about how God created science, right? This would be good Christian dogma, that if there's that science is something that has been created by God, right? Okay, good. That's good Christian. That's like meat and potatoes, good Christian dogma. Okay. Last week we talked a bit about how God created science, Is it plausible that God created a persona of the deities of other religions to appeal to those cultures as would help them the most to find purpose and understanding in their lives? So, she says, all those gods do exist, but they are the same as my God in a different understanding. So this would be the idea that essentially, potentially, all religions are true. So the first part, let me start with the first part. Well, you said, is it plausible? I don't know that it is, but I will say I think it's possible, right? So I want to start by saying I won't eliminate the possibility that God has created these things. Okay. And I love the generosity and the creativity of this question, by the way. Like the generosity on display is a generosity of spirit, Leslie, that says, where do we find our common ground as people? And in the history of the world, these different religions have existed and continue to exist across the world. Is there a way that we can try to understand them as all in some way being correct, right? This is so very much in contrast to the way many of us have experienced our faith, not only in our current lives, but historically. We know that people have fought and killed and died over these things. And lest we think that that's a Western Christian thing, all you have to do to disabuse yourself of that notion is pay attention to any world history. That the fighting and killing and dying over religion is a human reality, right? But we have Western American Christianity has been often horrible. I think it would be really difficult to find a religion that doesn't have any adherents that have been horrible, and movements within them that haven't done horrific things in the name of what they believe is right. This is such a normal reality in our human existence that it seems the constant is actually not any particular religion or any particular culture. The constant is not actually a specific God or even lack thereof, because in the name of atheism, the Soviets, the Soviet Union and communist China have done some horrific things. So I think the common denominator is the violence of humanity. And there's a phenomenal movie called The Book of Eli with Denzel Washington and Gary Oldman. And it's a post-apocalyptic movie. It didn't get a huge amount of press, but there is a guy who is basically the protector, steward, shepherd of like the last Bible on earth, right? And the Gary Oldman character is like the villain, and he wants the Bible, not because he believes anything in it at all, but because he understands the power that a book has when you say this book is divine or divinely inspired. The power that is present when we are able to invoke a higher power in our cause. So this is really important for us to think about. That when we invoke a higher power in what we are doing, the dynamic shifts. You see this, by the way, take religion out of it for a second. If you've ever seen two kids, siblings perhaps, playing with each other, and then the fight, it turns from playing into an argument, and maybe from an argument into a fight. You very quickly, if you're listening from the other room and you haven't intruded or invaded yet, you're just listening, you hear, I'm going to tell mom, or I'm going to tell dad, Or if you are that person, you hear Dad, and they're coming to get you. Dad says, Mom says, what's happening in that space? What's happening in that space is two people who are in the same basic, even if one's a little older and younger, they're both kids in a family dynamic. Two people who are basic equals in a power structure, in a community, because a family is a community, are invoking a higher power for their cause. Under what? Under the mom said rule, the dad said rule, but what they're really doing is they're invoking the authority of a higher power for the sake of their cause, and it gives their cause extra force and legitimacy. If I say to you, it's like, you've had the Kindle for 20 minutes, it's my turn. You could go, no, I don't care. And I go, but that's not fair. And you go, well, actually, even though I've had it for 20 minutes and it's your turn, but it took me 5 minutes to get this thing logged on right in it, and I only really got to play, and then I had to put my name in, and I really got to play for 13 minutes, so I should have 7 more minutes. And you go, well, no, but we said 20 minutes and there's a timer. And I say, well, yeah, and then you go, I'm going to tell Mom. And I go, tell Mom. Let's get Mom's opinion, right? What are we doing? It's simple. And by the way, I'm not cynical about this. This is how we work. We appeal to a higher power. Thomas Jefferson, who had a Bible that he cut out all the miracles, all of Jesus' miracles, he cut out with a razor and just kept the words, because he wasn't sure what he bought about all of this spiritual mumbo jumbo and other worldly stuff that I personally totally buy into. But he still insisted on invoking a higher power in describing the rights of a people in the Declaration of Independence. And it wasn't a given at all that the Declaration of Independence had to do that. They needed a formal declaration that they were declaring themselves as a country separate and independent from the crown, from England. And what Jefferson did was, instead of just say, we've decided, if you don't like it, too bad, come get us, he said, all men are created equal, right? And are given certain rights, inalienable rights endowed with certain inalienable rights by their maker, chiefly life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. What's he doing? Essentially, Thomas Jefferson is saying, Dad said that you can't treat me like this. That's what he's doing, right? That's what Jefferson does. And then when Martin Luther King Jr. in the 60s, late 50s and early 60s, is writing and preaching and teaching and fighting tooth and nail for equality and freedom for people of color, and specifically for African Americans in the segregated racist country, he invokes Thomas Jefferson. Why? Why would Martin Luther King invoke Thomas Jefferson? So that he can say to the people who are listening, what we're doing is not who we're supposed to be. I have it on good authority from Thomas Jefferson, because Thomas Jefferson says this, 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 and this. Do you see? What's he doing? He's invoking a higher authority. Okay? So when we talk about our religion and we use it as a way to justify our mistreatment of others and our own claims to power, this is not exclusive to Christianity or to Western Christianity or American Christianity. It's not exclusive to any of those things. I'm not saying we haven't done some truly inventively horrible things with it. We have. We're just not alone in that. Leslie, I like your question because it is universal in the truest sense. How can we recognize the dignity and validity of the spiritual lives of the billions of people who have lived and do live on this earth? That is the question. And so Leslie's question, is it possible that the God we believe in which we believe, created all these other deities, gods, and did so that each group, each culture in its time was able to discover, to experience some kind of purpose and meaning, and essentially experience God, experience the divine in a way that was going to work for them. That's a really good question. So here's I have some dilemmas. And one of those dilemmas is that not necessarily created as a separate entity, but is those other gods. Oh, Leslie, that actually makes my response a lot easier. In that case, I would posit no. Okay, I would posit no. With absolute love for this question, I would posit no. But and that's the part where I think I'm going to get difficult. But I want you all to. I got to say this stuff, right? The suggestion then would be that that these dogmas of these different faiths are actually of God. And so, for instance, and these things are pushing us. Well, it might feel like arrogance to say otherwise, and I want to get into that too, Lisa. That's really important. Okay, that's really important. It can feel like arrogance to say otherwise, and we want to talk about that. The problem that we have is that these different religions don't at all say the same thing about how humanity is structured, and don't at all say the same thing about what appropriate behavior is. And so you have structures like karma, which sounds really cool to us because it means like essentially that people get what they deserve, but that lives itself out generationally into things like a caste system. The caste system in India, where you have people who are born into a class called the Dalit, who are known as untouchable, and the use of the use of karma has been the understanding of karma has been used to justify those people being born into a class system. The caste system is you are into a lower class from which they are immovable. They belong in that place. They belong at the bottom of the rung, is what's taught. That if you are born into that, that's probably because of something you did in a previous life, or because of something you did here, or like you deserve it. That's profoundly problematic, right? And then the reality is that what we say is true about our faith, I should say karma is profoundly problematic for the Christian, not just in general, but for Christians. That's a problematic idea. It runs in opposition to our understanding of the way grace works, right? Because karma says you get what you deserve, and grace says you don't. And there are religions that say that we are pre-existing souls that get placed into the bodies here on earth. And others, and for again, the Christian faith does not say that, right? And you have religions that talk about reincarnation, that we come back again and again and again and again. This, and Christianity very clearly says something different. And we have religions that say when you die, and there's nothing. And Christianity has a different take on that. These aren't small details, because our adherence to one or the other changes the way that we live our lives. We live our lives differently if we take it all seriously. If we're serious about our religious life, if we're serious about God, and we believe, for instance, that there is a resurrection, not a reincarnation and not annihilation, but a resurrection, how could that not shape our lives? And if we believed in annihilation, that we die and that's that, how could that not shape our lives? And if you believe in reincarnation, how could that not shape your life? And they would shape your lives differently. They are different things. And you cannot believe, like literally, it's not possible to believe all three at the same time. And all three can't be true at the same time. I mean, unless you believe that people who believe in reincarnation are reincarnated, and people who believe in resurrection are resurrected, and people who believe in annihilation are annihilated, you just get whatever you believe in. That's problematic too, right? I'm taking my time here because I want to be really careful, right? I was having a conversation with a friend of mine in seminary. She wasn't in seminary. I was in seminary. And a good friend of mine from college, a good friend of mine in college, his parents lived near my seminary, lived about an hour away from where I went to school. And they were Jewish. And they are Jewish. They still exist, and they're still Jewish. They have not converted. They're Jewish. And I was Christian. I still exist, and I have not converted. So I'm Christian. They're Jewish. So I was at their house. They would invite me to their house, and we would have great meals, right? They took good care of me. They were really kind to me and sweet to me. And we would get in these really good conversations about our religions. And I remember one time we were talking about, like, me being Christian and them being Jewish. I mean, this happens because I'm a seminarian. Well, of course they're going to ask, and we were talking about it. And I said, well, she said something about Jesus. And I said, well, you guys don't believe that Jesus was the Messiah. And she said, well, of course we don't believe Jesus was the Messiah. He didn't do any of the things a Messiah was supposed to do, so he wasn't the Messiah. Now, here's the deal. As a Jew, she didn't believe Jesus did the things a Messiah was supposed to do, therefore, he isn't the Messiah. As a Christian, looking back, I would make the argument that Jesus did do the things that make him a Messiah, and here is the Christian argument for that. So I think he is the Messiah. We can both be wrong, but we can't both be right. That's not actually physically possible. Like, it's not actually a coherent statement to say that he is the Messiah and he's not the Messiah. That's the trick. Okay. You got a lot going on here, so hold on. Let me read through some stuff. Lisa, what about all the feels like arrogance? What about all pre-Jesus? What about all those in the past who never heard about Jesus, the message, all those not saved are going to hell? Well, that's a very specific understanding of Christ. That's not all Christianity, of course. That feels like the conclusion of saying the foundation of everything is Jesus instead of God. There's no such thing for the Christian as Jesus instead of God. Jesus is God, so there's no instead of. God is God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And to the Christian, God is God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. So when I talk about Jesus, I'm not talking about someone instead of God. I'm not talking about a different being. When I talk about Jesus, I'm talking about God. That's the Christian understanding. And so I never want people to think that, like, when I talk about Jesus, I am talking about someone that isn't that, like, instead of, right? And that's an important distinction for me. Why is it problematic to believe that you get what you believe? This is a genuine question. I know it is, but I'm not sure exactly why. Also, you can't appeal to everyone, and apparently God can't either. Why would God set up the world in a way that some people fundamentally cannot go to heaven based on the Bible? So, okay, real quickly, one of the things that you guys are doing, Lisa and Leslie, is you're going directly to, so if we don't believe this, we go to hell, which is abhorrent to both of you. You're both going, wait a minute. I can't stomach the idea that if someone believes something differently than me, they go to hell. Okay. Now, so let me say something. I'm not saying that someone who believes differently than you goes to hell. That's not what I'm saying. And in fact, it is not a given that Christianity states that. So there are Christian strands and Christian people who say that. I don't see Jesus saying that. I don't see that as the great force of the Bible. And so here's what I want to suggest to you two and to anyone else. So much of our great discomfort with the possibility that one religion is more correct than another in terms of literal accuracy, in terms of there was a person named Jesus who also was God, who lived on the earth, was killed, and came back to life. That either that happened or it didn't. And if it didn't, then no amount of me believing it did matters. Or I should say, no amount of me believing it did makes it real. If it did happen, however, as an actual event in the history of the world, it changes us. It changes the world. So whether or not Jesus did this thing has an effect on us. And it can't be both. It can't be that he was resurrected if you believe he was, but not if you don't. That's not how history works. Okay? Right now we are having we're having a real dilemma because we have people who are denying reality. Climate change isn't really happening. It's just not happening. And if it is, it's not because of people, because I say so. This isn't really a pandemic. And if it is, it's a hoax. And if it was created by the Chinese, unless it was created by Americans who gave it to China to bring back here, it's part of the conspiracy of liberals. And wearing a mask takes away my freedom, and I don't believe in any of it anyway. Denial of basic facts of what's happening changes the way we live our lives. There are people who deny both the reality and the magnitude of the Holocaust. There are people who just say it didn't happen, it was made up. Whether or not the Holocaust happened matters. It matters. It changes things. If I said, well, whether or not the Holocaust happened, we can still learn from the possible, like what if we can still treat it as a thought experiment and say, if it had happened, what can we learn from that? But that doesn't honor the truth of our history. So history matters, right? Whether or not you feel anything about an event, it either happened or it didn't. So I think it's important for us to say that these different faiths are stating different realities. And choosing one and living it matters. Okay? And I would place as a Christian the question of whether or not Jesus rose from the dead matters. Not as a symbol, as a real statement of fact. If it happened, it changes the world in a very specific way. And if it didn't happen, that changes if it didn't happen, that says something about the world too. Either way. Leslie's got a lot to say, and I want to make sure I pay attention to it. I can experience something and perceive and believe that it went down in a way much differently than someone else, and for me that is true. Someone else with a different background or emotional state or any number of factors would experience it differently, and that event is just as true for them as it is for me. It doesn't change the literal facts of what happened, but the experience of each person it happened is still true. I agree, totally. Sister, yes, I agree. Yes. And still, the event happening matters. And how we perceive it matters. George Floyd was murdered in broad daylight. That happened. And there are people who watched that and said he shouldn't have done whatever he did to get arrested. Is their perception of the event as valuable as yours? Are people who say, well, I perceive slavery differently, so I'll write in my textbook that these were, in the Texas textbooks for history, it says that they, instead of calling them slaves, they called them immigrant labor. That's a perception. Do we accept that as true? Yes, we all perceive things differently. This is a really important part of our life, our shared life as humans. Okay? Not all views are equal. They're not. Okay? Like, if you perceive the Civil War as an issue of states' rights and the South as the great lost cause filled with bravery and a noble cause, I don't hold your opinion. You are perceiving the same event from a different perspective than me. I'm not going to value your opinion the same way. Are you? Are you going to value someone's opinion who is a white supremacist and says that and longs for the days of antebellum South? I bet you're not. We know that not all values are equal and not all people's perceptions of things are equally valid. So you got a lot going on. You guys are doing really good work. This is good work. I'm really excited about this. We're going to keep pushing ourselves. I'm going to keep trying to push myself, and you're pushing me, and we're pushing each other. This is good. So let's keep looking at what we got here. Lisa Grubbs, but isn't it all still seeking God? Yeah, it is. And how do you know it happened? I don't. I 100% don't know that it happened. I live as if it did, because living as if it happened changes the way I live my life. I don't know that it happened at all. I don't know that any of it's accurate, that it's factual. There's no news crew, and while there is plenty of evidence, both of Jesus' historical being and of his death, and there's actually historical evidence of his resurrection in terms of the witnesses that wrote about it and talked about it. None of those can be proven. Those could all be disproven by our current standards of what's fact or fiction. I cannot prove in any way, shape, or form that it happened, any more than anything else. And yes, I believe, and I want this said emphatically, I believe that all the people we're talking about, I believe that all people seek God, even people who don't believe in God. And maybe that's arrogant, Lisa. Maybe it's arrogant for me to say, even if you don't believe in God, you're seeking God, because it purports that you know something about people they don't know about themselves. So it's difficult to say those things with any humility. But I believe that God is love. So and according to John, those who love know God. So I believe that. So I believe that people who experience and know love, which seems to be on some level all people, this proves the Christian dogma to me, that we were born out of God's love and that we were born for that love connection. This proves to me, enough to me anyhow, not to the whole world. It's not proof like, again, beyond a reasonable doubt, but this persuades me that the Christian dogma that God is love and that those who know God, know love, know God, that persuades me that the Christian dogma is true, because that's what I see being lived out in the world. Here's the trick. You are, both of you, and I have done this in the past too, and some of our Christian siblings have done this as well, many of them, and the ones that we hear the most. Think that if I say I disagree with you on the facts of who God is, what I then am saying is you're burning in hell forever. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. I think Islam and Christianity believe radically different things about God and about and some things in common and some radically different things about humanity. Both and. Okay? So Islam and Christianity are fundamentally different. Do I believe that when a Muslim faces east and prays, drops to their knees and prays multiple times a day, that the one God I believe in hears them? Of course I do. Do I believe that because I disagree with them about their understanding of God, that the one God of all things doesn't heed them, hear them, love them, or care for them? No, of course not. Of course not. Okay? That's not what I'm saying. I think we have a lot to learn from other religions. I think we have a lot to learn. It does not mean that I think that all religions are equal. And it doesn't mean that I think that they're all factual. But I think all religions are capable, and Kathy Baggett made a point of saying something about this. The difference between all religions are true and all religions have truth, Kathy Baggett says. And I think that's important. All of us in this space, by the way, if you're arguing with me that like, who are we to know, but you're still arguing for some kind of meta reality. It just might be a meta reality where everything's true or all has truth. But we're all arguing for that. I mean, if I say God is love and that God is understood through Jesus, and you go, well, I don't think it has to be understood through Jesus, then you and I are disagreeing. You think I'm wrong. That's part of the picture. We can think each other is wrong and still find value and truth in what one another is saying. Now, I think this is a fundamental how we talk to each other in the world and live in this world. The choices seem to be either I'm right and you're wrong, so I live and you die, or I go to heaven, you go to hell. Or, well, let's just say we're all right. What if we lived in a world where we disagreed with each other and also respected each other, loved one another, and saw value in each other's opinions? What if I could say, oh, I'm at dinner with my friends, and they say, you think Jesus is the Messiah, and we don't, period. And then we talk to each other about what that meant for each of us. With love, over a meal, and hugged when we left, back when hugging and visiting people was a thing. Like, what if we just disagree with each other about who God is, genuinely, and then share life and love? I just don't see that as an issue. I mean, it is an issue because we see people, but I don't think it has to be an issue. And I would say that the Christian dogma insists that we live peaceably with our neighbor and seek the best from them and seek to understand, care for, and love them. And I would say that a Christian expression that seeks power over others, or to harm others who look differently, or to stand in judgment of others and say they're going to hell because they believe differently, that to me is a heretical understanding of the Christian dogma. And I'll fight other Christians for that all day long. Just like I'll argue with you about the dogma of this church, I will argue with people on the other side of this too about the dogma. If it is a dogma that says, well, everything's true if you want it to be, I'll argue with that. But if it's a dogma that says, when we disagree, you're wrong and you go to hell, I want to argue with that too. We live in a time where we're not, in a civil and loving way, able to recognize that some of us believe genuinely different things than others and still hold each other in actual respect. How can I say Jesus is Lord and you don't think Jesus is Lord? I'm not saying you in particular, but a person. And then what do we do with each other? This is the tension of living in a world filled with people of different beliefs. But even if the whole world was Christian, we'd still be fighting over these things. Just for the record. If however 7 billion people were Christian, or 5 billion, or whatever it is, we'd still be fighting over what kind of Christian and how Jesus is Lord and what that means. We're people. We're a mess. Okay? Okay. Lisa, there's a couple different things. It's that sliver where you say where love exists, it is Jesus. That's not a sliver for me. I mean, either Jesus is or Jesus isn't. No, me saying it doesn't change anything. If it's not true, then I'm wrong. And if it's true, I'm right. And how I feel about that is up to me. And then you ask, well, do I think the majority of Christians are saying what I'm saying? Look, I can't help what the majority of Christians are doing. That's not true. I'm trying my best. Like, I'm taking a place of leadership in the church and trying to speak publicly about a God of grace and love and humility. And I'm not alone at all. I have plenty of colleagues, siblings in Christ who are doing the same. But it certainly has not been the popular Christianity of America. That's true. Christianity is the fastest growing religion in the world. I'll say that again. Christianity is the fastest growing religion in the world. It's not in America it's growing, and it's not growing in Europe, in the places where it's been part of the power structure and the status quo. But in the places where it's been oppressed and marginalized, the places where that's where Christianity grows. I mentioned the caste system in India. When you meet Christians in India, or Christians from India, some of them have been colonized. Well, we know that India was colonized. It's not a maybe. A lot of the Christians in India are part of that Dalit, untouchable caste, because that's where Christianity grows. Christianity grows among people who actually identify with Jesus as oppressed and marginalized, as the disinherited, as Thurman wrote. I like your Catman joke, Leslie, even if I didn't acknowledge it right away. Leslie, we are trying to love people and they are trying to hate. I think people are trying to love people too. They're just trying to love the right people. And yeah, there is hate involved. And people are living into hate. I agree. And also, by saying, but love is good and hate is bad, we are creating our sense of dogma, or as you said, Catman, right? But I mean, that's my point is, we all live as if certain things are right and certain things are wrong. We already do that. The goal is to do that in a way that is both honest to ourselves and humble and generous to others. But I don't think it means that we say that everybody's right. But I think that, as Kathy Baggett wisely said, I think we can find truth in other religions, and I think we can find truth in other people's experience of God, and we can learn from that. So here's the thing. I taught an Old Testament class when I first got out of seminary, and at an Episcopal school, and it had people from all walks of life. The vast majority of kids that were there were not Episcopalian. The majority were self-identified as Christian. In South Orange County, Christianity is still the norm, and a lot of evangelical Christians were there because, well, I won't get into all the reasons why, and we had evangelical Christians, we had Roman Catholics, we had Jews, Muslims, Hindu, Sikh, atheist. We may not have had Sikh when I was there, but you get the point. And I would teach a class that had Catholic, Protestant, Episcopalian, Jewish, atheist, and Muslim in one class, right? And so I taught this Old Testament class, and when it was over, I had a student come up to me and she said, I'm Jewish, and I never got bat mitzvahed, but now I think maybe I want to, because I need to take my Jewish faith more seriously. This was one of the, I'm bragging right now just for the record, publicly, but it's one of the great honors of my, absolute great honors of my life, that a Jew would hear me talk from a Christian perspective about God and say, I want to be more Jewish now. How cool is that? I'm not saying she and I believe the same things. And I'm not even saying we're both right. But I'm honored to have been a part of her journey. Because as you said, Lisa, is she striving for God? Yes. Of course she is. Of course she is. Am I? Gosh, I hope so. And I hope you'll see it that way. I cannot convince the whole world to believe in Jesus. But I can believe in Jesus. And I can live as if that's real. That's true. And I can help my siblings in Christ who also believe that, so that we can live in that together, because it's meant to be shared. One thing I haven't said in almost any of this, which is my fault, is that you cannot be a Christian all by yourself. You can't, and I'll say it again, you cannot be a Christian all by yourself. I'm sorry, you cannot. I used to think you could, and you cannot. Being Christian means being part of a community. It means it. Even if that community is remote, you're not alone. And we share this reality. I don't spend a lot of time thinking about how I'm right and others are wrong. I have too many people in my life to disabuse me of that notion. I try to spend my time and energy living into the reality of the resurrected Christ. If Jesus was raised from the dead and the Christian dogma is correct, then we are participating in that resurrected life, and that there is such a thing as a life after this, and we get to be with God in it. But we also, if we take that seriously, then we take the teachings of Jesus seriously. And when Jesus teaches us to pray, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven, Jesus is teaching us to pray that we want this world here to look more like the kingdom of God. And then as Christians, it is our vocation to live into that and to help make that prayer a reality. The mission of the church is to pursue love and justice and peace. That is right in our catechism. to restore people to right relationship of God through worship and prayer and the pursuit of justice and love and peace. And I'm going to live as if that's true. I'm going to try anyhow. Because I believe when we live like that, we are living into the reality of the resurrected Christ. I'm going to wrap up. This has been a wholly inadequate response. Just profoundly inadequate. Because I think there's another hours and hours to talk about this. And because I don't have nearly the breadth of information that I should have, or experience that I should have to be able to respond to questions as beautiful as your question, Leslie. But I think we have the capacity, and this is what I want you to kind of sit with if you can, if you're willing to, anybody who's listening. I think we have the capacity to claim certain things to be true and to live as if they're true. And when necessary, to disagree with other people. Plain and simple, disagree with them. And still treat them with love and respect. Genuine love and respect, not false pseudo, like, I love you for who you are, but I'd love it better if you changed. Actually loving and honoring people who they are. Have faith in a God that is working in their lives. And be open to the possibility that there's so much we don't understand. My adherence to the Jesus narrative and to the Christian dogma should expand my love for the people in this world, not narrow it. My adherence, my following of Jesus should be a following into the world with open arms for all of God's creation, not something that shuts me down and keeps me guarded and walled in. Christian xenophobia is, however much we've seen Christian xenophobia, Christian xenophobia is a contradiction of terms. Christ opens us up to this world and pushes us into deeper love. So where we see xenophobia and hatred and fear of others, we are seeing a denial of the truth of God's presence in others. That is my Christian belief. And I'll argue with Christians all day long about how we are meant to love our neighbor. All our neighbors, our Christian neighbors, our atheist neighbors, Jewish, Muslim, Sikh, Hindu, Mormon, go on. The list goes on. The list goes on. And I'll also say we believe different things, and I think I just hold both to be true. We got more going in. We'll keep going. I appreciate the depth and the passion of your engagement and your willingness to stick with me as we talk about this stuff. I know this is a funky format. So thank you for participating in it. To anybody who's watching this but wasn't participating, we got off into an interesting start. I'll make sure Krista knows you said hello. I should have said hello when I was on the phone with her. Moving, even though we're done moving, we're still moving. You know what I mean? Like, we're not done, even though we're done. There's still more to do, and that's what that was about. But if you're watching and you didn't get to participate in the chat, but you're watching after the fact, just join us next week, or shoot me an email with a question or a text with a question you'd like me to address, and I'll be back next Tuesday, same bat time, same bat channel. And yeah, that's the deal. We started, the wife and I started Battlestar Galactica, the sci-fi series from the 2000s. and we're watching it with a friend, and they're watching it in their homes and state, and we're watching it in ours, and then we're talking after the fact. So we are. It starts with a 3-hour miniseries, and then we finish that, and then we watch the first episode. So we're digging into that. Betsy Berry, you might like it, but you'll have to buy it on Amazon Prime. But if you want to join the fun, Betsy, you could. Betsy Berry is one of my secret TV buddies. We watch a lot of the same shows. All right, team, I'm gonna hang up. Love you guys. Thank you so much for being here and participating in this with me. And we will keep at it if you stick around. Okay, bye.